me, Sean Capri, and welcome to episode 106 of We the GamerCast. It's the official podcast of WeTheNerdy.com, and it comes to you on iTunes and Google Play and Mother Loving YouTube every single Monday. Thank you for listening, subscribing, giving the video a little thumbs up. Even if you listen to the show and you go to YouTube and give it a little thumbs up, there's probably one of you who does that, and if you do, thank you so much. Thank you for subscribing and rating on iTunes and all that other good stuff. And this show, remember, it's a video, and we're making it better thanks to everybody at patreon.com/makeusbetter. It's pretty literal, especially our executive producers, Nick Militia from Next Level Games, Joel Brooks, James Johnson, Dr. Doom, Jesse Armstrong, Sheldon Benedict, Glauco Schaefer, David Ray, Joey Hare, and Mike Drummy. You guys, executive producers, we thought like 2, maybe. I didn't think I'd have to like pull out a scroll and let it roll down roll the scroll like a roll of toilet paper, but we'll get to that in a second. There's so many. If you're new, here's the deal. Every week I have sweet hangs with a stranger from the internet, and we talk about video games and all the rest of the stuff. And if you want to be part of the show, it's very easy. You don't even have to have your own podcast, everybody. You can just be on the show. That's sort of the idea. If you want to be on the show, tweet at me. It's at Sean Capri. Sean like Connery, Capri like the pants. I'm just sort of like doing a couple checks around my equipment. Everything is actually recording this time. That, ladies and gentlemen, wasn't the first time that I screamed hey, but I did check. Nobody's napping right now. We should be good. I have enjoyed having Lincoln in my lap actually doing this, because he just kind of like looks at me real weird, and I get some strange entertainment out of that. Guys, last week, Toby Thornton, I finally had Toby on the show, and I'm so grateful for it, because I think I just really like talking to Toby. I like kind of like peering into his brain. And you know what? Thanks to our new milestone at patreon.com/makeusbetter, we're doing recurring guests. So Toby, you don't have to wait another 100 episodes, man. This can happen sooner rather than later. And I appreciate all of the conversation that happened on Twitter out of this. One of the things that we talked about was what was the greatest Zelda ever. So that ended up being the thumbnail and all that kind of stuff. And everybody kind of like jumped in with their own take on what their favorite Zelda game was. Even Chelsea and I were talking about it. We just kind of like, I like doing lists. I don't know about you guys. And I mentioned this sometime around my birthday in the summertime. I really recommend this. If you guys can figure out, get together and do like a list night, top 10, I really recommend it. My goodness, I feel really stuffed up still. I have been sick forever, and yet I want to just keep rambling on to you guys. Do a list night. Do pick a couple topics. Do you do your top 10 Zelda games, and then do like they do on Nintendo Voice Chat, where you can move it around. Everybody has their own turns. You can introduce a new game, and that bumps everything down. It's lots of fun, guys. You should definitely do it. So thank you anyway. Thank you to Toby. Remember, he's on the Nintendo PlayStation podcast, and he's at Toby's_take if you haven't already followed him. So that's great. I think last week I was talking about or maybe the week before. It must have been last week. I don't think I was talking about games the week before. I was talking about my backlog and starting to get a little bit worried about it. Now is a new week. I was going to tabulate my backlog. There's no way, dude. That thing is gone. Anything that I've missed. Because we're in the thick of it already, everybody. I'm looking at the fall, and it's happening. So I need to tabulate my fall/holiday, and I think this is what I've got. I've got a couple of weeks until South Park, and that's kind of when everything when it hits the fan. South Park is out on October 17th, and I don't know. I don't know. I think I might want to stream that one, actually. That one could be a fun game to stream. I've been doing a little bit of Cuphead. That's a tough game to stream, but people want to see it. So there's that kind of like weird thing where actually people will watch, but you just suck at the game so bad. Like, it's not even just me. I mean, I definitely suck. There's something special about my suckiness. There's a good one for you, Johnny. You can have that one for free. But yeah, man, just playing that. But I kind of want to play something that can be a little bit more conversational. And what can be more conversational than some of the things I'm hearing that happen on South Park? So a couple weeks, I'll finish up some Cuphead. I'll finish up my time with Forza, and I will be writing reviews on both those games, Forza 7 and Cuphead. Spoilers, one of those exclusives is going to be in my top 10 for 2017. One of them I thought was going to be in my top 10, And actually, this isn't really a spoiler at all, although maybe you can do the math just on some of my conversations with some of you, and maybe some of my thoughts on the Twitter about both of those games, and it's great, guys. Evil Within, I'm more excited than how can I say this? The first Evil Within totally caught me off guard, and I have such good memories of playing that game because I don't think another horror game had me playing in 20-minute bursts quite like that one did. Not even Resident Evil this year, although it was close. There were times when I just couldn't go any farther with the Evil Within. Farther, I couldn't do it. Like, I actually had to take a break because I was sweating too much, and I could actually like sense my body getting more and more tense, and then I'm like, okay, take a pause, and you could feel everything relax a little bit. It's almost like you need a little breather. So I'm excited for the Evil Within, man. That's it. I hope they do some good stuff. I will wait on reviews for it, though. That is not like South Park's Day 1, Evil Within, that's a wait on reviews thing. Wolfenstein? I'm hearing people say Wolfenstein. Somebody let me know. Is Wolfenstein the real way to say it? Is it Berenstein Bears or Berenstein? I think it was Berenstein. So maybe it is Wolfenstein. Anyways, Fall is looking really great. And Destiny's taking a back seat, but I might try to see if I want to get at least raid ready for by the time South Park comes around. So that's all I'm going to say about Destiny, because I know everybody is sick to death about Destiny talk. The only other thing that I want to say is you're welcome. Just like Moana. Somebody, if you've seen Moana, you got that song in your head right now. I am providing to you, or I have asked and requested and manifested the upcoming Splatfest. Everybody, you need to go check out If We Ran Nintendo, episode 72. It was back in August, and Bobby's going on and on and on about all these different, like, he actually had really good Splatfest ideas. Dracula versus, actually, that wasn't even the best one. I can't even remember his, you have to go check it out. And he's going on and on, and I'm like, Bobby, I just need to go with my knockout punch, and it's toilet paper, over or under. And I swear to God, when that came up, I'm like, I could have sworn I said that. So I went back and I found it. I timestamped. It's around 35 minutes, I believe, because Todd, who we'll be talking to in just a second, that's when we got in. That's when we got into our topics. So please go check that out. Episode 72. It'll give you a good laugh, considering that this Splatfest is actually happening. I won't go into my Super Nintendo Classic Edition just ridiculousness that happened on Friday on this show. I think Bobby is going to want to talk about that on If We Ran Nintendo. We'll record on Monday night. So if you're listening to this on Monday, we'll do it live. We'll do it live on his channel, youtube.com/Nintendo Guru, because I want to talk to him about it. I'm not happy. I tried 3 different places to get it, and that's all I'm going to say. So a little teaser for If We Ran Nintendo. And I may have had a bit of a little temper tantrum. I vented to Bobby, mostly joking, but as he started taking it seriously, I leaned into a little bit more. So that's a good time. Guys, that's enough for today, isn't it? I think that's me. I hope you're well. I hope this week is going to be great for you, and I hope the load of video games is not too overbearing. I hope you're enjoying it, and yeah, man, hit me up on Twitter. Remember, at Sean Capri, Sean the Connor Capri like the pants. Let me know what you guys are playing. I just love what's happening. It's just like we're all kind of coming. It feels like we're playing games with each other for the first time in forever, and it's awesome. So let's do it. Let's get into it. I haven't even recorded this yet. I will be talking to Todd Oxtra. I don't know what happens here. That's weird. I haven't done that in a while. Soon, I will be talking to Todd Oxtra. You're going to hear it in a second, but I'm going to talk to him in 20 minutes. So here he is. He is at Todd Oxtra. At Toxtra. Not Todd Oxtra. Toxtra on Twitter. He is the host of Secret Friends Unite podcast. In my mind, this is podcast royalty. This was one of the first shows that I remember hearing about as I was entering into this new frontier. I remember hearing of the Todd Oxtra. So I can't wait to pick his brain a little bit, have a great conversation. Hopefully, I can't even promise that this one's going to be great. It hasn't happened yet. I'm sure it's amazing. Here he is, Todd Oxtra!
Well, let's see. Bobby's an old man, so he gets up at 3 o'clock in the morning for his, his early bird breakfast. And then you have kids. You have a little one, so you're up at like 3 o'clock in the morning anyway. So what else are you gonna do?
That's the thing though, man. Like and maybe I'm just doing it wrong, and this is something that goes through my brain every once in a while. Like maybe I should be up at 3 in the morning. Like I'm really not, and I still manage to be a bit of a baby about sleep. Like, to be honest with you, it's just not. I don't know. Chelsea's on another level. I have to still figure out how to maximize the dadness, I think.
Yeah, we had this game when my son's 11, so he's almost 12. So this is a long time. This is like ancient history for us because your mind blocks that period of time because it creates. That's why people have more kids, because they totally like. There's hormones that say it was the best thing in the world. Nothing negative happened, and then you have more kids. We only had one, so apparently we're broken individuals.
Oh, I don't think that's what that means.
No, but the funny part is when you say that, it's my wife and I. I don't know if we were both playing the same game. It was almost like, if somebody stirred or woke up, they got it. So they almost like tried to both who could hold out the longest. Oh my goodness.
So is it like it was a conscious thing then? Like how did it end up rolling out that just one? Because I'm hearing a lot of my friends go, "This is good. This is enough. I think this is no problem. Maybe we'll adopt the one child rule from overseas."
It's amazing. It all depends on how your life is. And I have a sibling, an older sister. My wife is an only child, so she was the one actually that wanted another child because she had that experience. Like, I missed out on a lot. I didn't have siblings. Some people even get the dark and weird situation where like, well, I don't want to be the only one who has to take care of my parents, which is just like,
oh wow,
it's like the wrong experience.
That is
like what?
Looking ahead.
Yeah, they're born. You have to worry about when you're going to die. I mean, that's really morbid. And but yeah, I mean, it ultimately becomes what you want to do. My wife is going to school for her master's. She wants to be a writer full time, and life just kind of got away from us. We just like, oh, maybe we'll have another one. Maybe we'll adopt. It just never happened. Yeah.
How come adoption?
Well, my wife is from the Philippines, and she just knows there's a lot of kids there that just don't have.
Wow, I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. And also, my wife is older than me. She's like 5 years older than me, although no one ever says that. They always assume I'm like 5 years older.
Well, not that you look particularly old either. You guys are both apparently like forever children. This is...
Oh, my God.
And also, I mean, I don't want to be totally creepy about this, but like if you flip through the pictures and, you kind of creep a little bit on Todd Oxtra on social media, you're aging well, man. I gotta say, like, this is kind of a nice thing for guys like us, like for nerds who grew up, probably not, swimming in ladies, like we're surrounded by all that stuff. We're not the best looking young men, and to grow up and go, shed 5 pounds in the right place and then have a nicely shaped head like yourself, you're aging well, man. So good for you. I don't know what you're supposed to say to
Sean.
that.
Now, Sean, how old are you?
I am 33, and I'm getting old enough to have to think about that. I'm like, when did I change?
Okay, so you were actually a little older than I was when I had my son. I was 30, so you're a little older than me, but it's fun. I mean, and you're going to experience some things that are very unique coming up. I mean, the journey you are on is fantastic. My son is, and I don't know what we're going to actually talk about today. It's up to you. It's your show.
I
this
don't
is
even
awesome.
know, dude.
And one thing that always amazes me, and you always see this on a lot of the podcasts and Facebook pages, is like, I'm gonna make my son do this, or I'm gonna raise them the right way. And I'm like, if that had been my dad's goal in my life, all I would have watched is the Lone Ranger, westerns, not played a video game, been an avid hunter, and played played semi-professional baseball. That's what would have been my life. But my dad was like, do what you want, and maybe it was the fact that my dad just didn't care about my interests. Not that he was a bad guy. It was just my dad was old school. He was born in '38. He was kind of he loved me, but he was like, ultimately, I'm not your friend. I'm your dad. If you're interested in something, find it, explore it. But he didn't hold me back. He didn't say, "Oh, you have to go hunting with me. I want you to experience it, but after that, that's fine." So I'm not a great white hunter as my dad was.
So, okay, let's talk about that a little bit. Like, it was there. Did you just not like? What about, because I don't really get hunting. I don't know about, I mean, obviously it didn't really like grab you as well. I don't really understand the pull. I feel like it's just uncomfortable all the time. Also, you're killing animals, so that's another thing. Like I like big buck hunter, I'm all for it. But
that's a switch.
But
Come
really,
on.
I mean, it's a funny thing. I went camping one time with a good friend of mine, and we all drove home, and we were a couple hours later than my friend's dad. It was out at his cabin, and by the time we got back to his place, he was in the garage, and he had this carcass hanging from the ceiling, and he was kind of like hosing it off and everything.
Yep.
And I'm mortified. Like, I'm so sheltered when it comes to this kind of stuff, and like, you know, just in the movies, and this is one of those, it looks too real to be real. It looks like a prank. So he's hosing this thing off, and I knew that he was a guy who hunted and cooked his own meat, and he would often have his freezer full of just venison and all these other different types of things. He made his own wine. So he's hosing this thing down, and I'm like, what happened? And he goes, oh, you didn't hear? We hit a deer on our way home. And I'm like, are you okay? Well, the car looks okay. And it doesn't even add up to me that he's completely messing with me. He stopped by a farm, and I don't even think it was a deer. I think it was like a sheep or anything. It just shows what I know. But yeah, man, like what was your, like, did you just kind of like ricochet off of the atmosphere of hunting? Like, what was the approach to maybe even try to get you involved?
It's kind of an interesting experience because in my household now, I do not even own a gun. It's kind of interesting. But as a child growing up with my dad, who grew up in rural Minnesota, hunting was a part of his lifestyle. It was his hobby, just like video games were for us. And part of it was just, you know, if you can use the land and cultivate it. He grew up on a farm. You know, this is part of just the experience. You know, you use what you've got, and he loved it, and he wanted to teach me the same, you know, experience, which I totally get. I grew up in a rural community as well. Hunting was really ingrained in that mindset. And I thought, well, you know, why not? I went to hunter safety, learned how to fire guns. My dad took me out, and I was always a nerdy geek kid. I don't even want to say I was raised by TV, but my mom worked. Yeah. My dad worked second shift, so when I'd come home, my sister would come home. She'd go off and read her girly books or whatever, and I would sit and watch every cartoon that was ever going to be on. I'd watch the monster movies, sci-fi, whatever. So that became like my main focus. My friends too. You know, I was probably the first generation that really grew up with toys targeted at kids, Transformers, He-Man, things like that. So that was part of my thing. So, and I don't want to, this sounds horrible because it's like the average nerd thing, but it's like, I hated being torn away from the warm glow of TV, my Atari 5200.
Nice. Oh, yeah.
All those fun things. You know, I loved that. Yeah. So for me, it was kind of like, and I grew up in, you know, I didn't not like nature, but to me, it wasn't like, I've got to be out there because it's a thing. But I mean, I grew up in that generation, out playing with kids, bikes, and things like that. But getting back to hunting, my dad took me out several times. So we'd go up in my uncle's cabin, and then we'd go hang out with one of his best friends, and we'd go up to this very rural place in Michigan called Cadillac, and it was broad open range. So you'd have long range firearms like a 30-06, and the other place to go was 12-gauge shotgun because it's near in. Yes, of course.
I mean, that's what I would use in Turok Hunter, but I couldn't see that far. Exactly. You know, the pea soup fog of war. Yeah.
So and I didn't really enjoy it. I kind of felt like, and this is probably like,
was it boring?
It was kind of boring because in certain instances you're wearing blaze orange because you don't want to get shot. But I was nervous. I was a kid, 13-year-old carrying around a gun, realizing it's life or death. If someone came up behind me and I got nervous and shot them, my life changes. And I had an experience where basically I was sitting against a tree. It's cold in Michigan, very cold. All of a sudden, I start hearing something coming from behind me.
Oh my God.
Turn around, look behind the tree. I see 3 deer. And I got what they call buck fever. Basically, you cannot do anything. You're frozen. It's not fear. It's just adrenaline. It's almost your body telling you something's going to happen. You're either going to, fight or flight. It's that perfect moment. And
or stand still.
Or stand still. Do whatever.
There's that third option that people forget about.
And those were the only deer I ever saw in my 2 years of hunting. They ran away, and that was it.
You could have had a triple kill.
I know. I
could
get right
unleash
through that.
like your
Right through the
super,
next
your
all the way
ultimate,
through.
to just get them all at once. You're in my sights.
I could see it in slow-mo, like the Matrix, those bullets penetrating each, jugular vein. But they heard me, they moved away, and that was my deer experience.
Oh my gosh.
And that was basically, think about this, 8 hours a day, 3 days, and that's all you see.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, sounds exciting, right?
Not really, but you did mention something right off the start that, like, and that's, so when I say, like, I don't get it, I don't understand hunting, it's the killing animals, don't love it. Like, obviously, I eat steak, like, I'm not, like, and it just, whatever happens, and I just live with that. But you mentioned something at the start where, it's the pull of living off the land, making your own. I really, like, how much of that sort of made its way into your household? Like, was it more supplementing with hunting in terms of what you guys were eating, or was it just more for fun? And if your dad happened to grab something, then that's what was for dinner for the next, like, 6 months? Or was it like a primary source? Like, I think that's fascinating. I was getting a shuttle to work when I took my car in, and he was telling me he grew up in Africa, and he grew up on just, like, fresh food every single day. And we got into this conversation about how, man, we don't even have time to go to the grocery store to buy fresh fruit every single day. So I'm curious, like, how did this sort of, like, enter the household?
If we had to survive off of my dad's killings, we would have starved. It was, I loved my dad to pieces, but, and he passed away about 10 years ago.
I'm sorry. Man.
And that's okay. But I always joked with him because every year you'd go, and I think for him it became more of this is his dude weekend. This is his, he gets away, goes away. My mom knows he's going to be away, so we're hanging out, whatever. And they call it Deer Hunter's Widow, whatever weekend. I don't know what they call it. Yeah, that's what the ladies called it. That's amazing. And they'd play poker. My dad would only cook one time a year. He only cooked once. My dad was the guy that grew up with, back old school. Yep. He'd open up a can of beans and eat it cold.
Oh, yeah. My dad would do that too. That's amazing. My dad's dinner special was, he's still around. I'm sure he would make this if I asked for it, but like a fried egg and beans. And that was it. It's just like, it doesn't get any better. Have your protein. I love that.
Here you go. Yeah, so but the one time of the year he would make food, he'd make a huge pot of chili. And that was his contribution to the hunting trip because that's what he wanted to do. And literally, that's all you would eat for 3 days is chili. And just imagine dudes eating chili, not bathing. Yeah. And I'm not sure how you're into the hygiene thing, but there is no bathroom.
Yeah, I'm sure it smells amazing.
Yeah, so you're doing your thing. But there was poker. I'd call it tales of ribaldry, whatever you want to call it. Guys behaving badly, and it really was bonding for my dad. This was his opportunity to thing, and so it would be like us playing a game together. It's that experience. So when I did go with him, he was lucky enough to get deer. He got bucks, and for me, I'm a scientific type of guy. Yeah. I have a nursing degree, but I've never used it. But I am fascinated by science and biology. So for me, the exciting part was the dissection of that deer, field dressing. Oh,
okay.
Absolutely loved it. I embraced it. I mean, I wasn't going and getting all in there.
Yeah, just face first, just
But I mean, it was my first time I ever ate a deer heart. We'd fry it up in a pan.
Just the whole heart.
You cut it up. It's kind of like you think the heart is a muscle, just like anything else. And it's a very lean muscle because it's working a lot. These are deer. So, but it was really an interesting flavor and taste. And I mean, most people say, a heart? Oh, that's disgusting. I'm like, but that's kind of the whole eating the whole beast and taking all, using the sinew to make...
And you kill the whole animal. Exactly. You're like, maybe just a little of the thigh.
Stay away from the liver, probably, maybe the kidneys, but yeah, certain things like that. So, but that was my interest, and that's how I kind of bonded with my dad. So, and then life went its own way. I got really involved in a lot of extracurricular activities, working things in high school. That's when I kind of parted ways with that. But I think overall, my dad was just happy I tried. And as a parent to a kid, I have a 12-year-old or 11-year-old, soon to be 12. I just want him to experience stuff.
Yeah, man.
And you know, I don't want to push him in a certain direction because ultimately self-discovery and what you enjoy is so exciting as a kid. Mm-hmm. You know what your friends are into, what you're learning and experiencing. It's so great. So it's a great experience. I enjoy what I did. I eventually will inherit my guns to our house because I think it's a good thing. If Logan wants to use them, that's great. I'll train him.
Name. By the way, Logan was number 2. It was Lincoln or Logan. Nice. It was basically like the flip of a coin, man. And if there's another, Chelsea and I were just talking about that. If we had another boy, is it too much to have 2 L names? I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe not. I could go. This is another flip of the coin, but we don't really have. We had a whole bunch of names for boys. Girls, we were totally screwed. Mm-hmm. But if we've got all these, we've got like half the cast of Lost. Could be could be named after. So let's talk about this whole thing, too, this notion of, like, the discovery. So, I mean, you obviously recognize your dad allowed you to kind of find your own thing. And I'm assuming that even though it sounds like there's, like, a lot of testosterone, like, involved in the hunting and the guys' weekends and all of those types of things. Was there any sort of, like, friction in terms of, this isn't what I want? And not only do I not want this, like, hugely man of the earth type of lifestyle or interest, I want to sit in front of the TV and play my Atari. Like there's a bit of a gap there. So I'm trying to like get a sense of what was that like growing up for you.
Well, and to give some context, my dad was a foster kid, and he really didn't have a constant home. He was moved around, and because of that, that was one thing that was so important. Of anything, he wanted to be the best dad he could be, not my friend, because he didn't have that friend relationship with his foster parents and things like that. Mm-hmm. But my dad found ways to connect where we didn't have to like the same things, and he knew that and I have an older sister, so she kind of, I think, maybe plowed the way first because of girly things that he was definitely not interested in. Harlequin romance books, cooking, things like that. And
now he's got his boy. Yes,
exactly. He's got me. He can embrace all those things and put them upon me. But it is interesting. We had certain gaps that we filled. Like, he loved, one of our rituals every Sunday morning, we watch Abbott and Costello films. Mm-hmm. Something he grew up as a kid. It was on reruns. Loved it. Lone Ranger, those type of shows. Star Trek, the original series.
Yep.
He loved it.
Oh, cool.
Really like it.
Okay. Yeah. So there's the connect. Did you like it? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I liked it because at the time, I mean, we're talking like early 80s. There wasn't a lot going on with genre at the time. So for us, Star Trek was a big thing because it was like, this is sci-fi. Yeah, man. So very cool. Because my dad watched it when it was live in the 60s. Mm-hmm. So for him, it was something that resonated with him, and he shared it with me.
My dad loved Star Trek as well. That's hilarious. Sorry, I think I cut you off. So
no, it's generational, which is great. And so the thing is, you can share it. The next generational, exactly. You go on a Voyager with those characters. Yeah, no, it's a reach. But then we also had football. I love football. Nice. American football, not European football. Sorry.
Yeah, no. Also, Canadian football doesn't. Most people don't even know that that's a thing. But Canadian football, in my mind, doesn't even register. Like, it's actually embarrassing. Like,
they have a Canadian football game though, right?
Yes, and a video game, the Canadian football. It's so stupid. It's so, that's where my dad and I don't see eye to eye on it. He is so proudly Canadian that, like, it doesn't matter how low budget, how awful it is. Like, it's just clearly not as good as NFL. But he loves the CFL, man. It's pretty funny. It's not funny. It's nice. It's endearing, really. That's what a good Canadian should do. I've completely abandoned the game. I think it's like, in terms of just a sport, it's just ridiculous because there's different rules. It's got this giant ball. Like, NFL ball is really nice and sleek, and you can actually throw it. This one's like, you can maybe get your hand around like an eighth of the ball, and it looks like it's just a beach ball compared to it. And then your wide receivers are in full sprint at the snap. Like, it's weird rules, man. But anyway, I don't know how we got on that tangent. What's your favorite Star Trek?
My favorite Star Trek's probably Deep Space Nine.
Yes! Dude, I was just talking about that with Bobby. The theme song.
High five.
Yeah, I love it. How come?
And it's funny because I tend to fall on the wrong side of fandom. Like, I was a... I was a Babylon 5 fan. And there's not many of us out there. I mean, but what I loved about Babylon 5, and maybe some people think I'm contradictory or the devil's advocate. Yes, I play that role sometimes. But with Babylon 5, if you don't know about it, it basically Michael J. Straczynski, famous writer, basically he wanted to create a sci-fi opera epic. And it didn't want it to be episodic. He wanted to be serialized and have one overarching story in 5 years. And he developed that story year one and put it out there. Where Star Trek was, villain of the week or whatever, standalone story, kind of like The Simpsons. Nothing ever changes, between
nice
episode to episode.
Bow at the end of everything.
Exactly.
It's all good.
No one learned anything. Bart's still going to do wacky things. They forgot that he almost died because of hijinks, whatever. But with Deep Space Nine, this was really Star Trek's first attempt to do that. Take that model, carry over all the Dominion Wars and things like that. And I just thought they added so many dimensions with those characters. One of the creators and developers behind that was Ron Moore, who then went on to make Battlestar Galactica. And you could see that influence where he was 100%. Going.
Yeah, man, I love it. I remember, and because my dad watched Star Trek all the time, and it was almost like this is about as nerdy as he got. He likes collecting things. He's got like toys and everything. He's got these giant 3-foot Ninja Turtle toys. I don't even know where they're from. But just stuff. If you go into his basement, he's got stuff everywhere. And he just geeked out about Star Trek. And it was almost like this is where I'm going to get in trouble with Lincoln, because I'm just going to be the same. I'm going to be over the top. I love all things. It's not even just going to be just Star Trek. It's not going to be one thing. It's just I love video games and all this crap behind me. And he's going to look at all that and go Dad, that's dumb. And he's going to just go do something else completely. And that's I saw the appeal of Star Trek growing up, but because I don't know, maybe it was just because he liked it so much, and he maybe he downplayed it too. He'd go oh, I know it's stupid, but I like it, and that's all that we would see of it, is that it is totally cheesy. But I remember very vividly, actually, the very first episode of Deep Space Nine. I remember it after The Next Generation, and that's the one that I really grew. I never really watched the original. I got to know the William Shatner cast through the movies for the most part. But yeah, Next Generation happened, and then Deep Space Nine, and I remember thinking, I don't like this theme song as much. I really like The Next Generation. It's just that is such a great song. And then, totally different. It's not action. It's what is this space station, and why do I care? This is not a ship. This thing doesn't fire torpedoes or lasers. So as a kid, I didn't really grasp onto it. It wasn't until a little later in life that I went back and went, that is such a watchable show. And in fact, I like the theme song even more now. It's just so nice, and I just really like it. So I love that you say that that's your favorite.
Yeah, and my co-host on the podcast, Charlie, is the biggest Star Trek fan. In college, Voyager was on, Deep Space Nine was on, and this tells you how bad it was. He would videotape these episodes, and he had a VHS collection like you wouldn't believe, the things he recorded, and he would edit out the commercials in between it. Yes. Oh my goodness! And I hated Voyager so much, and I would just annoy him. I was the person that would sit there and just comment on every episode, and this tells you how much of his fandom is. And this is a really dumb story, but it's just how people can get very fanatic about their things that they love. And this isn't even Star Trek. He just loved certain things, and it was we were in college. He was working at the front desk. Yeah. I was up in the room. He called me and said, "Hey, can you record Melrose Place for me?"
Oh, no.
I'm like, okay, I will. And then he calls again just to make sure I did. And I said, sorry, I'm recording NASCAR instead, just as a joke.
I love it.
He came up from the front desk, and was so mad at me that I said, dude, I'm just kidding. He punched me. So it's just interesting how people's fandom goes, and that was just something I'd always joke about with him, is just, and if I screwed him up when he was recording those episodes of Voyager, he would get so pissed off at me. But, we survived.
And what a story of the times too, right? Where you go, if that happened now, it wouldn't be a big deal. Even if you forgot to PVR or something, there's ways but that was it. If you didn't tape it, you are totally screwed. Were you on, you mentioned that you were talking about comments, and were you on forums or anything for Star Trek or things like that? Is that, how deep does this go?
So I was not. So I like Star Trek.
Yeah.
It's not my love.
Yeah,
now,
okay.
Babylon 5, on the other hand, I probably would have. And that was a show. I don't even know how I was able to watch it. Oh, I know. Because Babylon 5 was syndicated at first. And then TNT bought it. Basically bought the rights to show that show every day. And they did a unique thing where to get people up to speed, they made a standalone episode. It was like almost like a mini-series that basically caught everybody up. So it was a good starting point. And that's I recorded that show every day. But to your point, absolutely. If you missed it, you did not know when you would see it again, and it was very frustrating. It's frustrating as a fan because you don't want to miss a show.
And it's funny because we kind of say it jokingly, like, "Oh, weren't those the days?" Like, "Oh, if you missed it, you were out of luck." Ha ha ha. But in the moment, there was nothing worse. It's just like, this is the kind of like what you talked about with having another kid. Like there's something that makes us forget how awful it was, but I'm sure it probably just throwing the landline phone across the room and having the cord bring it back. Just these terrible things that happen. Can I ask you a question, Todd?
Yes.
How come there's no great Star Trek games?
There is one great.
I knew you were going to say that. Well, it was a bit of.
I will say there's a couple of different eras and style of Star Trek games that are pretty
I'll
good.
rephrase. Why is Star Wars better? Why can they make great Star Wars games and not great? I'm just going to upset you.
Well, because and I will say this. Star Wars is bombastic. It is action first, characters 2nd. They layer characterization as things are happening, kind of like a video game. You're learning, talking to your characters, like Nate Drake. He's kind of informing you about himself as they're, he and Sully are going off and doing something. That's where the dialogue and the character building sets. You're not getting like a long 3-hour, they're sitting around talking about their lives and drinking coffee.
Yep.
It's not happening. Whereas Star Trek is much more about the characters and the plot happens around them.
Sure.
It's more diplomatic. They solve the problem through their wit and wisdom, rather than with their blasters. So ultimately, I think in Star Trek, you could probably count on fingers and toes the number of times they actually probably shot someone with one of their photon torpedoes or something. Phasers. Yeah. Exactly. That's why people love the Wrath of Khan so much, because it has one of the best battle scenes of Star Trek. But that's like the rarity. It really is. So I would say
Star Trek 6 when they sneak onto the Klingon ship and they're just firing and there's just the pink blood everywhere. My goodness, that just blew my whatever I was 12-year-old mind. Why is it pink? Oh, aliens, of course.
That's right.
It can't be the same.
Exactly. And you had the one Star Trek movie, it was First Contact, with the Borg, some good battle scenes in that, but ultimately, the rarity is the great combat battles, and it's harder to make a game. So what Star Trek did really was the early games, they had almost like point-and-click adventures. I don't know if you were back in the day.
Oh, yeah, man.
That Interplay game, and I don't know if your dad might actually like this, because if he liked the original series, that Interplay game series, it was very much like they had Kirk, they had the real voices when voice acting in video games was very new. CD-ROM drives was a huge deal.
Yep, I got my 4 times read speed, man.
Exactly. I remember you telling me though the fact that you had your CD-ROM, whatever, and you had no speakers, right?
I saved up all the money for my sound blaster, and it's like, oh wait, you need speakers. Right, and it was all for that Mortal Kombat port. I wanted to hear Scorpion say, "Get over here." We got our sound blaster. Yeah, man, the crappiest speakers that we ended up getting.
Oh,
anyways,
boy. Yeah.
Sidetrack.
No, but that's if you want that old experience, that's probably the best. I think it's called Legacy Rights or something like that. So that was like in the heart of that primary series. But probably the best game since then, and it's my show I like the least, it's Voyager. They actually had a first-person shooter Voyager game, and it was really well done. I think it was done on the Unreal Engine. And it was very much a very heavy on combat game. You fought the Borg, had all the voices, but I felt so weird because I hated that series so much of the characters, but it was fun.
It was Star Trek, and this is as good as it gets, I guess. It's kind of like, I guess we're gonna have to like Batman v Superman. I'm just kidding. So you talked about how Star Trek is all, and I'm just gonna hang on to this. And if anybody doesn't like Star Trek, then and you know what, just bear with us. We'll move on in a second, but you talk about how Star Trek is like characters first and like action and stuff maybe later. Like that to me just screams role-playing game. Like there should be a very like decision-based type of game. And maybe my experience with a lot of Star Trek games, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's like this character doesn't exist in the world, or like here's a new red shirt along for the ride, and it just doesn't really ever click. And I kind of want to be maybe more involved in the world, or why haven't we got a role-playing game? I feel like just Bethesda, please give us or even like BioWare did Star Wars, do a J.J. Abrams and go to the other side. Let's do Star Trek as well, man.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, you get the right developer for it. You do have class-based characters in Star Trek. You've got the engineer, you've got medical, you've got security, you've got all those pieces. You've got the command element, and they have done some interesting things where they've done space simulation, where it's more turn-based, things like that. But you don't really have the individual characters doing things.
Right.
They also have the Star Trek Online, which a lot of people like, but it's an MMO, and it's still the combat feels very much. And I played that actually on Xbox with friends. It was actually kind of fun. But it's still more of that shooty, bang, bang type of thing. Now, the Star Trek VR experience that Ubisoft put out, I've heard great things about it.
What's it called?
The Bridge Crew, I think.
Bridge Crew, that's it, yeah.
Yeah. And I've heard people absolutely love it because you are basically role-playing in that role.
Yeah,
the captain is telling you to do this, you're doing that, but you're definitely it's limited because it's VR, but it's cross-play between PC and PS4, which is kind of cool.
That's awesome. So, that does sound like what we've been waiting for this whole time. And even as I said, BioWare, why don't you do a Star Trek? Like, would you argue that Mass Effect is basically that, like, very character-driven, very like race-oriented too? Like, you're talking about the classes, and I think about also the cultural overtones or undertones of, not even, would you say it's under? I think it's just like totally saturated with a lot of cultural commentary, that Star Trek. And I think that BioWare does touch on that even to the next level of all the different types of minorities is Mass Effect. I think they could totally nail a Star Trek game. Todd, I would be totally, there's no easy way to segue to this. But I need to talk to you about the Air Force. So you have like what a history. This is 1 hour is definitely not going to be able to do it, especially when we dedicate a half an hour to Star Trek. But you grew up hunting in the woods with your dad, eating deer heart. You at some point get a nursing degree, which we'll touch on maybe another time. But also venturing into the Air Force, and I love on your Twitter, it says AF vet, which I'm sure a lot of millennials will think means something else.
Oh no, I didn't even think about that.
You're a veteran AF. Tell me about this, man. Okay, so like growing up as a geek, loving Star Trek, all these things, loving your Atari, and then all of a sudden, I'm gonna go fly planes or I'm gonna be in the Air Force. What's that journey?
My dad was a vet as well. He was he was worked as a munitions loader on naval aircraft in the 60s. Then he went off active duty, became a CB, which is basically the construction arm of the Navy. So they would go and build things. My dad was a fantastic carpenter. He actually taught shop.
Oh, wow.
In high school. He also taught history. Then he went to work for General Motors because he could make more money. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
Along the way, though, my dad was a hardworking guy, but he wanted me to go to college, and he knew there was a great way to go, which was through military service. And he thought maybe the Air Force Academy or something might be an opportunity. Also, ROTC, which not sure if they have that in Canada, Sean, or if they have a program like that. They have the Canadian Air Force, of course. My wife actually spent some time with some Canadian Air Force folks at her public relations school.
Oh, wow.
Because and I did the same thing when I went to my school in the Air Force. It was international. We had people from Morocco, India, Puerto Rico, wherever else. Puerto Rico's not international; it's part of the United States, but still, whatever.
Remember, guys, it's part of the.
Right. That's right.
Does America look at the Canadian Air Force kind of like you do with the CFL, like with the Canadian Football League? It's like, yeah, you guys go have your fun with your ancient planes, and like, yeah, you do your thing. Or I actually don't even know, like, where are we at? Is Canada okay in this respect?
Yeah. Canada, we love our partners.
Yeah.
And little known fact, Sean, the Canadian Air Force runs on maple syrup.
That's true. That we should actually make sure more people know that.
Sure.
No jet fuel. It's just pure blood from maple trees. That's what.
That's right.
Yep. Yeah. Right. That's living off the land. That's what we've been talking about.
I believe there was a great drought in 1922 to fill up the Sopwith camels of the Canadian Air Force.
All factual. Why am I laughing? I don't know. I guess it's funny because it's true. That's why.
It is exactly. It's sometimes people don't deal with stress very well because it was a stressful time for Canada.
That's true.
So you laugh.
It was a hard time. That's right. And what else can we do up here? We have to laugh to stay warm.
Yes, your enemies to the north, the White Walkers. You have to be prepared.
The White Walkers. We have a constant patrol for the. We have actually rescue helicopters. That's what most of our Air Force does. Rescue helicopters for the polar bears that the land is melting beneath their feet. We go snatch them up.
Oh.
We go rescue them. That's what 90% of our Air Force, as our AF, is doing.
Wait, when did you retire the Ice Dragons?
That was in, of course, 1976.
Okay.
It was
That's
actually,
right.
There was a few other things culturally happening. There was a lot of like dogs versus dragons thing, and people went with dogs. And that's kind of where we're at. Now I got 3 of them. If things went differently in an alternate history, I'd have a pet dragon on my roof.
Of course.
On my igloo roof. It's just... What are we even talking about? How did we go from Air Force? Okay, so this is an option for schooling.
Yes. Yes, so we have 4 academies in the United States, Naval, Air Force, Navy, actually 3. The Marines go to the Naval Academy, so we really have 3, West Point, Air Force Academy, and we also have the Naval Academy. And I actually have friends that went to the Naval Academy, so on and so forth. But I really didn't want to have that experience. The Naval Academy is almost like it's basically a military school. It's very, very strict. You are always you're always basically on notice. You don't have a lot of relaxation time. A lot of people, we always laugh because those of us who went through ROTC, you can get in the military in many ways, but we always laughed about the folks in the academy because when they'd get out and they'd go into the Air Force active duty, it was almost like them actually going into college where they just went crazy and went insane and, party a little too hard. Yeah. So for them, it was their time to finally relax versus us thinking, hey, we're kids. We're not kids anymore. We got to be adults. So
yeah, that's
very funny. Yeah, so I decided to apply and interviewed for ROTC scholarships. My dad was in the Navy. He said, Todd, join the Air Force. It's much better. I'm like, okay.
Oh, wow. And was that did you show any sort of inclination to it earlier than that? Like, was there any like cadets or anything like that? Or just like there's a junction and now all of a sudden this is an open road? Because it seems to me that like, that maybe there's more of a path, but maybe I don't know, man. Like I guess what you're saying is that it was an opportunity and you just kind of went after it. So I love that.
Yeah, well, it really wasn't something. I mean, when I was a kid, my dad would take me to. They would have weekend warriors, as they call it. Basically, if you were in the reserves, they do training, and my dad would take me to his training with some of his other buddies. Would bring their kids, and we'd go and we'd watch them perform. They do drills, and they would also do projects like in the community. So they would build things for the community houses and things like that, just to use their skills. Because when you're a carpenter, you kind of got to do that. So that was his role. So my dad would tell me some great stories about when he would go overseas, Spain. Little known fact, this is even getting crazier. My dad was active duty. My dad actually went on a date with Annette Funicello. Now, everybody who's listening are like, who the hell is that? She was one of the original Musketeers on the Disney Mickey Mouse Club. Yes. So my dad also was in the reserve with Mr. T's brother. So crazy.
Mr. S.
Yeah, exactly. So I segue. Sorry, Sean. I go all over the place.
I love it.
Come back.
That's what this show's. Well, good for you because I often don't remember. I'm like, what else can we talk about? All right, we'll leave that totally unclosed loop.
Yeah. So I thought, I want to go to school for a medical degree. So I thought, but what's the easiest way to do that? Get a nursing degree first. Yep. That's 4 years long. I'll get my medical experience and then also understand if I really like the medical field. And I can be a nurse in the Air Force. So I applied and basically tested, was accepted at 2 colleges, Michigan State, went to Michigan State instead. And basically in college, it's interesting because in ROTC, you basically... 1 day out of the week, you would go and do drills. You'd be walking around campus in your uniform.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I mean, like, what makes it different then? Yeah, so you're 1 day a week, what kind of drills are you guys doing?
So basically, we have you take Air Force courses. So basically, learning about the Air Force, and then you also have drills. So you'll do this basically called the Leadership Laboratory, and you do drills. You would basically learn how to march, learn about military structure, organization. You do military history, formations, things like that. And then basically the Cadet Corps is almost like modeled after a real Air Force organization. A wing is kind of the structure of the Air Force, and then basically, so every cadet would get an opportunity to basically play a role and learn leadership. And then every summer you had the opportunity to then go to either some type of training or experience. Like if you wanted to do skydiving with the Air Force Academy, you could do that. You could go learn survival training. You could do that. You could so I did a couple of different things. I went to a nursing program, which was really cool, where I actually got to see how nurses operate in the Air Force. And a lot of times, a lot of nurses are actually, the hospitals are right in major cities, are actually, they use ER, emergencies, like gunshot wounds and stuff, to learn. That's how you learn to actually take care of, like, combat wounds. So it's kind of cool. So I did that. Then I also went to what we call a basic training during my junior year. This is basically like a boot camp for us. So basically it's that intense 6 weeks long. You're basically learning all the skills you need to, if you like it or not. That's a big part of it. Do you like being yelled at by a drill instructor?
So this is physical training?
Yes. Yep.
So was this the best shape of your life kind of thing?
Oh, God, it was. It was. And I was always starving to death, eating the worst crap in the world.
Really?
Oh, God, it was horrible. Yeah, the food in the military is not great by any means. And I was so hungry because you were up 5:30 in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, I can't remember, up to the end of the day, and you didn't have any downtime. So you were constantly active and busy, and your mind was blown. And yeah, you were eating all the time, and you didn't have anything to distract you. There was no newspapers or anything, no
You're
TV.
Just in it.
Yeah. So I really loved it, and
you did. It sounds awful.
No, I mean for me. It was a good opportunity to, as a college student, you know that there's not a lot of structure except for going to class. That's it. And then sometimes that is the worst thing in the world for people because they have no structure. They fall down the hill, don't go to school, don't go to class, stay up too late, play video games, things like that. But for me, it was a good thing because it kept me on track. I had to shave, look okay. I had to learn how to take care of a uniform, and also sticking out like that on a campus of 30,000 and wearing a uniform, it kind of got people to talk. So I really enjoyed that interference, and basically after 4 years, got my nursing degree. Went in and I decided I didn't want to do nursing. I just found it wasn't for me. It wasn't my heart wasn't in it. And
what was nursing, your original path plan for it? Like you went in, you knew that you wanted your nursing degree, but was it like get in and get out as soon as possible, or did you see like a life in the Air Force afterwards? Is that ever the goal for anybody, or is it usually this is just a way for me to like serve my time? Like I'm assuming there's some sort of agreement that you sign to say like if you're going to give me my education, I gotta serve in the Air Force for X number of years. So were you planning on staying beyond that?
I wasn't sure at first. I had a scholarship, so I was obligated because of that scholarship, paid for my books and tuition, which was a great opportunity. Loved it. Thankful that I had that opportunity to do that. I had 4 years that I was committed to the Air Force, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do next. And because nursing wasn't for me, the Air Force was like, okay, what do you want to do? And I put my hat in a couple different career fields. I could have been in special investigations, basically, what's the show I'm thinking of? It's the NCIS kind of, but for the Air Force.
Okay, cool.
Special investigation. That's like drug crimes, murders, things like that, investigation. Or logistics, supply chain, things like that. So they gave me supply chain. So I'm like, okay, why not? So that's what I became. I became a supply officer. I went to school for supply logistics because having a medical degree doesn't exactly get you to a business and that type of degree or career field. So I did that. Did 5 years in the Air Force. Went to Korea for a year, which was fantastic.
Oh, wow.
The only problem with that was I married my wife 3 days before I did that, so we were apart for a year.
Good timing.
So, exactly.
Why did you do that, Todd?
Well, I had been engaged before, and so at that point I was kind of like, it didn't work out, so I wanted to just do something completely different. Some family health issues as well. So I thought, one thing in the Air Force, you don't get to choose where you go. They assign you where they need. But if you are willing to go someplace where maybe people don't want to go, like South Korea, they will potentially give you preferential treatment to get an next assignment. So I thought, well, maybe I can get close to my family to help out with my dad and such. Well, that didn't exactly work out. So, I still said, I'll get to go to Korea. I'll get some great experience. I'd never really been out of the country really before, so this was my opportunity to do that.
What was the job? Like, can you talk about why did they send you over there? Yeah.
So basically,
I never know what secret agent stuff. It's funny how often I talk to people who have done service. So it's like, I don't know what people are allowed to say. I've actually had some people like Chris Berto, details, redacted, and then we'll continue on. I'm like, oh, that's something. So I want to be respectful of what you can and can't talk about. So
yeah. So overall, my job is basically to make sure there's parts and fuel for aircraft.
Right.
That was my biggest job.
Maple syrup.
Exactly. I was an officer. I started off as a second lieutenant, leading guys that were well older than me, more experienced. So it was a unique instance where you have to be flexible, listen to the experience of others, but also have leadership to guide and direct. So that was kind of my role. And so when I went to Korea, really I was there in support of a fighter wing of F-16s that were co-located with the South Korean Air Force. So basically we would work together, and basically we would do training missions to basically prepare for any type of aggression from North Korea.
Yeah,
that's primarily our mission there, and also support the Pacific rim area, China, whatever, anything comes up. So and it was funny because while I was there, 9/11 happened.
Wow.
And the base I was on was a very small base, and it's very insulated, and we were shut down for 30 days. So just imagine that you're in your little small 1 mile radius town, you can't leave.
Yeah,
you feel it's like the dome or whatever. And I was supposed to go home because I had just gotten married, to go home actually to visit my in-laws for the very first time and do a little trip, because they allow you to take a leave during the year. And that got canceled, and everything got canceled. It was crazy.
No kidding.
And I wasn't sure what was going to happen next, because all those things were happening, and all of the roll up, and would I be deployed to support forward operations, things like that. It didn't happen. So thankfully that didn't happen. But having my brother-in-law, he went to Iraq. I mean, it was kind of crazy. But it was a great experience, and I got to know some great people in the Korean Air Force.
What a spin on it, Todd. Holy crap, man. I need to... This is going to sound like, as somebody totally not involved in this, and you're probably just kind of... Most people who've been in the service probably like, this is a stupid-ass question. Were you ever kind of just taken aback by the vehicles that you were around, just the machine of military, Air Force, Navy? You're around some things, the planes, you're just around stuff that most people don't even get a chance to see, and you're just in it. This is just 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, just there's an F-18 plane. I don't know the last time that I ever saw one. I don't know if I even have seen one. I don't know if I could pick it out. And this is just so, were you ever in the middle of it going, oh, this is very special, this is different this is a unique experience?
It was really cool. One of my jobs, I was actually on the flight line, and you get to see all different types of aircraft show up. Yeah. We even had the space shuttle show up at our base, which was very cool. Yeah, down in Eglin Air Force Base, because you're by Cape Canaveral, things like that. So they actually they landed, they refueled, and that was really cool. My wife actually, she had higher privileges than I did, being public relations and things. She actually got me closer than I normally would.
I love it.
And it was fantastic. But yeah,
do you know which one it was? Which space shuttle?
This would have been 2001, so God, it would have been Discovery.
Yeah.
It's hard to remember.
So awesome. I'm totally I need to get somebody on here who's been who's worked at NASA or something. I just want to pick their brain. I've done the spend a day as an astronaut camp. That's what Chelsea got me for a wedding present, because we got married in Fort Lauderdale, so we took a trip and did a day at NASA and stuff, and that was absolutely spectacular. That's what I geek out about, man. It's actually embarrassing to just geek out about space. That's why you'd think I'd be more into Star Trek just because of all the space stuff. But yeah, man, so you're around stuff. Do you ever just kind of take stock of just holy crap, this is not everyday life. This is a very different environment I find myself in.
Definitely. I mean, I started off with a base that had F-16s, F-15s, no bombers. They typically are more remote bases, so I didn't get to go to those. But we also had a lot of experimental aircraft. I got to be around a U-2, which most people have never been around, which are, spy planes, and that's a unique aircraft where the fact that it has actually no landing gear. So they have Camaros and these fast sports cars that come in and actually have to bring in a wheel underneath it as it's landing so it can actually land. It's so crazy. So you see this like you see like a Camaro, a Corvette. Like, what are they doing in an Air Force base?
Vin Diesel's driving it with Michelle Rodriguez and The Rock.
Fast
just
and
like
Furious,
we'll just like drive in underneath and just like, you got it. Or maybe the pilot just like jumps out into the car and then somebody takes over remotely and then the plane just kind of goes on.
That's a job I needed to have, and I don't even know how you even get that job. I mean, in the Air Force, like recruited for NASCAR. I don't know. It's just kind of crazy.
I think those people are built in a lab, Todd. I don't think they're actually real. They're just those are an additional secret experiment. That is fascinating, dude. So I have to ask, because I say that we talk about video games. How do games and nerd stuff, like, how does that happen when you're saving the world? Or does it? Maybe it doesn't.
It's kind of crazy because I started off, like most kids did, Atari 5200, because I had to have the better system than the 2600, even though the 5200 was the worst system in the world. And the first analog joystick control, but didn't self-center. Yeah. So it'd be like flopped over. Horrible. Piece of crap. And I don't keep my system, so I am glad I got rid of that pilot.
Joysticks used to have a switch where you could just turn that auto center off. You could just leave it and just flop around. Yeah.
Yeah, but this did not. Then I went to the NES. I bought my NES from my neighbor who got it from a thrift store in the early 80s. So I had that. And then, sadly, I had a big gap.
Yeah.
In high school, I was chasing girls, working jobs.
Okay.
All that fun stuff. And I just didn't have the time.
Yeah.
I just really did not have the time. I mean, I don't know where I would have snuck it in. But I did rent systems over the summer.
I love it.
Like, I'd go to like the local mom and pop shop, rent a Genesis, rent a Super Nintendo. So I have that gap. I did not play video games really truly until I got my crappy Packard Bell 486 SX in college. And I got into PC games.
Yeah.
And then after that, that's when I think video games really picked up their stride.
What kind of
PlayStation
guts were in
1
that thing?
Oh God, it was a 25 megahertz processor.
Yeah.
210 megabyte hard drive, and it did have 3.5-inch floppies, even though they weren't floppy. They were hard. So, and then I did the same thing as you, Sean. I upgraded that puppy. I put a CD-ROM drive in it. I put a sound card in it, and oh my God, it was just in the beginning of the internet too. So
25 megahertz. Our 25 megahertz had a little turbo button. It started at 12, and you hit turbo, and it would go up to 25. Which I later learned it was actually the opposite. It was kind of like backwards mentality. Apparently, it was a 25, but you push the button to take it back to 12 for some reason. I think there was a power thing, or I don't even know, memory allocation. I'm not really, somebody smarter out there knows why, but that was a thing, a turbo button, like automatic. Just by the click of a button, I was overclocking. Apparently,
it made you feel powerful. Turbo boost, hit the nitrous,
and it literally it had like the numbers would change on the front. It would go 12 to 25. It had a little display on it. That is incredible. Okay, so what do you play? What, like, you can't play much on that, like a lot of text-based stuff.
Well, I got into RPG gaming, actually, at that point. Betrayal at Krondor, one of my favorite authors today. I actually did the weird thing where I played a game and liked it so much, I actually then decided to read the books. Oh, yeah. And books are fantastic. And I actually interviewed that author on the podcast. So much fun to meet somebody you admire so much do it. But I love that game because it was turn-based. It was a side story based on the books. Everybody had roles. It was also tactical combat. So if somebody was in front of you and you cast a spell, you'd hit them, obviously. But then... Exactly. Then you played the LucasArts games, things like that were pretty low tech. I played Doom, and then I tried to play Quake, and my computer couldn't do Quake because it didn't have a graphics card.
You need OpenGL, 3DFX, and all that stuff. Oh gosh, that is hilarious. God, I could go in a million different ways here. I want to ask, kind of like, what is your fondest either PC, console, like era, even like looking back, all the way back to the Atari. Like, what do you have? Not even necessarily like the best. I think that their games just get better, maybe, and a lot of people will say 16-bit. But what's the time period you're just like, I'd like to experience that again?
It has to be the 360 PS3 era. I mean, I felt...
I say that all the time! Sorry.
It's... No, I mean, totally get it, because they were doing things, I think, technologically, that were probably pushing systems to a large extent beyond what we had seen, going full HD. Things were beautiful, and it was that leap plus the way I think finally storytelling came into gameplay. We really got the high-end GTA that we always wanted. We got Mass Effect, that trilogy that I think did something that nobody else has done since. They can't even make a good Mass Effect now, which is sad, because I'm an apologist for Andromeda, but by all means, it's not a great game.
I dropped it.
It's flawed. Well, and you know what? I don't blame you for doing it, because I basically grudge played that game and beat that game because I felt like I loved those. I owed it to them.
I felt that way too. Any other year I would have kept up with it.
Yeah.
But 2017 is a tough year, man.
It's not that. No. But I mean, I just think of so many great games that came out. Infamous, Uncharted, Last of Us. Yeah, I mean, just think of how that generation started and ended. I mean, just think of the crappy like 360 launch games that were like the original Saints Row. Even. Oh yeah,
like
oh god.
Even learning how to they had to establish standards for text for HD TVs versus old SD TVs and things like that. Like what an arc. I don't know if there's anything that is quite as dynamic. Like you look at even PC gaming over the course of history, and that seems to be all like crammed into the 360 era of just going from the old TVs to the new, and just like Xbox Live and PSN becoming a thing and just being so integrated. You got indies coming onto the scene. I say this a lot, and I feel like I'm so glad to hear you say that, because it's just like, it's almost like a canned answer of NES, of course, or Super Nintendo. Those you go further back, but maybe it's just because the 360 era isn't far back enough that people don't really like click in with it. But I totally agree with you, man.
Yeah, there's not a nostalgia for it from our perspective, because we're probably old enough to not feel like it was that long. When you get older, you feel like, oh, that was just yesterday. Yeah. No, that was 10 years ago, Todd. But there's kids now that are going to be growing up that, if they're like my son, he will feel nostalgic for that era.
That's crazy.
Because he kind of was that's where he first started gaming. And for me, I mean, I am most nostalgic, though, for the NES era, because that's truly where I sunk my heart and my life into gaming. I had more time than I ever did before. Yeah. Loved it. Now, I'm not a nostalgic gamer anymore, because, quite honestly, I don't like going back and playing old games, because they've iterated so much that experience, it's kind of like watching an old movie. I feel like it takes away from my original experience and my memory. And kind of was like, well, this isn't that great, even though I got an SNES Classic Mini. So whatever. What can I say? I don't know.
And that's, that's the life of a gamer, a geek, and especially podcaster, where we'll say one thing, but like then we'll do another thing. So I mean, what else? What are you gonna do? I have two more things that I need to get to before we both go back to our families here. One, maybe not so much an elephant in the room, but something. We never finished Console Wars. This conversation that you and I are having should have happened a long time ago. We had this like epic plan of doing kind of like this book club. Console Wars was like $1 on Kindle or on Amazon or whatever the heck it was. Like, yeah, we'll totally do it. And my problem was, because I bought it on Kindle, I never got to see the thickness of that thing. I didn't know this was like a Stephen King book, dude. Like, I'm kind of like flipping through and I'm like, okay, we're motoring along here. I must be a good percentage of the way through. And that's when I noticed, actually, Kindle has the little percentage at the bottom. And the number was so small for so long that I thought, surely that's not like the percentage of my way through this book. Did you ever finish it?
No, I think I got about 200 pages into it, and I don't know if I felt like I'm at the part where I'm at the feel good part of the book. Okay. And I don't know if I want to go to that feel bad part of the book yet. We're at this point, Nintendo is definitely the bad guys. Oh yeah. I mean, and the savior is coming into Sega. He's fighting Japan, and he's got an idea of how he's going to do this, and he's revolutionizing how you change the game and beat the big guy on his price. Yeah. And at that point, I'm like, I don't know. I mean, it's got cool pictures and things in it, but I'm like, I don't know if I want to go any further. I don't know.
I'm kind of the same.
I should.
You know what ruined it is the Switch, because that kind of like basically I was taking the bus, especially at the time, and I'm taking the bus and either reading or playing Switch. And like, I'm sorry, but Breath of the Wild is gonna win every single time over words. I mean, like, let's be real. I got to the point where Sony was getting excited for their partnership with Nintendo, and Nintendo gets up on stage and they announce that they're partnering with Philips, I think it was. So that's where I ended up. And I think we all know how it ends anyway, so like,
oh yeah,
why even? But I feel like it's required reading for a lot of nerds and people like us. This is a story that we should all know. I should know it better than, I think it was that person. Like, it's neat to look at a lot of old commercials are popping up and seeing some of the people. Like Peter Main, I think was on a video I recently saw, and just some of these old names pop up. So I wanted to just address that, and
sure.
I just think that's. I just loved every other day or every other week would be like, hey man, where are you? I'm at page 80. I'm like, oh, I gotta catch up. So one of these days I'll remember how to read again. I thought about reading it to Lincoln, but that's too advanced, I think.
That's true. And Sean, as I get older, and you'll find this with time is basically your most precious commodity, where you spend that time. Like I said, I think most Nintendo fans at this point are probably going to go into a state of shock when they see how many games are coming to Switch, when they can't play them all. So it's like, prioritizing. Bobby, quite honestly, has got to slow down, because that man buys everything, and he will never play any of them.
He bought FIFA. I'm like, what? No. I mean, I guess he's liking it. I'm glad.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, but we'll just wait till the movie comes out with Console Wars. It'll be done in 2 hours, because what's his name? The guy Seth Rogen. Basically,
that's right. I thought you were joking. That's right. That is a thing.
Yeah.
Oh, that's way better.
So but I totally get it. I read a lot of comics, but a lot of books, and I get so tired at night when I'm gonna read, I fall asleep.
Maybe I should be doing that too, because right now I'm listening to podcasts to go to sleep, and that's probably not healthy either. I could probably throw on the Kindle is just so nice because it doesn't light up the room, and I don't need a flashlight for it either. So it is for husbands and dads, I think. So maybe I'll jump on that. Very last thing, Todd, we're getting into the thick of things in the fall here. Games are coming out every other second. I think 18, like you were talking about, just came out for the Switch last week. I don't know if people are exaggerating with that. What are you looking forward to, man? Like, how are you approaching this holiday season of what will likely turn out to be just the absolute craziest year in gaming in decades, really?
Well, the best news I got was that Far Cry was not coming out this fall.
Right?
Like, thank God, because I thought that was coming too, and I'm like,
man, 2018 is gonna be nuts. What am I saying?
It never stops, Sean. Every year will be fantastic from now. But for me, it's quite honestly probably 3 games. Okay. Mario Odyssey.
Yes.
I played a demo of that now. It's rolling out at GameStops and Best Buys. So if you can stop by, check it out. And I did the right thing. There was a little girl next to me who was probably 6 years old.
Yeah, so
I let her
push her
play.
out of the way. Oh, okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I let her play, and I was just talking to her as she was playing. It was just so cute to see. Look, kids, you'll see this soon with your son. It's so much fun to watch it through their eyes, and then eventually they get better at you. Like, then my son's already 275 in Destiny.
Oh
so
my
Destiny
gosh,
2. Oh god.
Yeah.
So and that's part of the problem too. Destiny is that it's that elephant in the room as you speak. It's always there asking more of you. But quite honestly, Mario Odyssey, that's my number one Switch game that I'm going to play this fall. I haven't played a lot on Switch except for Breath of the Wild, because the other games I'm kind of like, that doesn't speak to me as much as Mario does, because you don't get a 3D Mario once in a generation, if even that.
Yeah.
I mean, so that's a fantastic thing, and they're going backwards. And Sunshine is probably my favorite 3D Mario.
Oh, wow.
And if they ever fix that and fix the camera issues and make it look better, I think more people would appreciate that game. That's just my 2 cents. Beyond that, Mordor, Shadow of War.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
I love the first game, even though I'm not a big fan of the Lord of the Rings art style that they used in the movies. It kind of looks kind of bland, but I just love that combat, because it's basically Batman in Lord of the Rings combined with that rhythmic combat, the cool story that's cinematic, but also well, I can't remember what the name of the gameplay mechanic is, where basically your enemies will remember you.
Oh, the Nemesis system.
I thought that was so much
amazing.
It added so much to my tactics and what I would do, and I just love that series. So I'm so excited it's coming out. I'm definitely going to play that. South Park. That's another one.
Dude, yeah. Now you're talking.
Very excited.
I love it.
Love the first one. I think that game would be, and I'm almost tempted just to wait for it to come on Switch, because to me, that would be a great home for it. It doesn't require huge, resources. The style of visuals, the combat doesn't mean it's going to need, a high FPS. Mm-hmm. But I might hold off on that one. Just same as Wolfenstein 2. That was another game I was excited about, Wolfenstein 2, but I'm like, I could play that on the Switch.
Oh, so are you waiting? You're going to wait on that one,
we'll see how Doom goes. Yeah. We'll see how Doom goes.
Yeah.
But I also got the conundrum. I sold my Xbox One and got a gaming laptop.
Ooh.
So, because now if you've got a gaming laptop, you don't need an Xbox because all the first-party games will play on your PC. Mm-hmm. So, for me, I'm like, I want to play some PC games, so I'm going to start Resident Evil 7 that's my Halloween game.
Nice.
So,
I was going to do The Evil Within 2, I think, for some reason I did Resident Evil, like, not at a scary time. I just played it when I got my hands on it kind of thing. But yeah, it didn't tie in at all. But Evil Within, man, it just...
Oh, that scared me.
It affects my organs somehow. Like, I think my spleen hurts when I play that game. But that's awesome. Dude, this is amazing. I'm so glad that it finally got to have you on, and this was such a great chat. Hopefully people love Star Trek. I mean, I feel like whether or not you're a big fan of Star Trek or not, you can appreciate a little conversation about it. So thank you so much. Tell everybody, we barely even talked about Secret Friends Unite. Tell everybody where they can find you, maybe just a little bit about, if they don't know, Secret Friends Unite. What is it about and where they can find it and all that good stuff?
Sure. Secret Friends Unite podcast. We actually started off as a Facebook group, my college roommate and I, and we wanted to just have a place where we could just talk about all geeky stuff together. Then out of that, we said, hey, we live out of state. We don't see each other much. We don't get to talk to each other as much. This is a great excuse to our spouses. Hey, we have to do this podcast so we can talk every week.
Bye.
So that's what we did. So we basically started this podcast. We're on episode 1. We just recorded 132 this weekend. Been doing about 4 years. I actually started on doing gaming podcast long before that, and then transitioned to this. So, but we don't really talk about video games much on the show. We really focus on nerd culture overall: TV, movies, comic books, cartoons, collectibles, things like that. With video games sprinkled in because my co-host does not play video games. So, this has been a pleasure because I love talking about video games with others. So, and when we had you on the show, Sean, we actually talked about video games because we did an E3 special with your cohort, Bobby Paul's.
He came for a little bit, but yeah, we sort of he got disconnected. We'll just say that we kicked him out. It was Yeah, it was all right. I love you, Bobby. I'm just kidding.
Exactly.
Well, it reminds me of Spencer Stapleton as well with Fortress of Nerditude. I think I said it in the intro here of you guys remind me of each other very much. You're both bald. Both have these nerd-centric podcasts and would like to talk more about video games, but you have a co-host who doesn't play as much. So, but I'm always impressed with not just the breadth, but the depth as well. Like, you just went on, how many topics did you just say? Toys, collectibles, comics, all these other things. And man, I can just focus on video games and I don't even get all of that right. And you do each one of those pillars so well. And I definitely recommend everybody check that out. Where can they find you on Twitter and all the other things to get in touch with you?
On Twitter, we're at Secret Friends U. Facebook, look for Secret Friends Unite podcast. That's our podcast page. We also have a group, too, if you want to talk about memes and crazy stuff. And I think you actually got a game out of our group. You actually got the South Park game, right? Did Chelsea get a code?
Yeah, man. That is really nice.
Perfect.
We're gonna have to figure... Because I've pre-ordered it. I don't know if I'm getting the code or not, but that is very, very nice. I accidentally sold one of our PS3s because Chelsea and I each had one, and South Park was in it when we sold it, so that person got an extra game. That's pretty frustrating. But yeah, man,
Excellent.
That's awesome. I know she wants to go back to it. She won't play my 360 version because she likes trophies.
Yes, that's the conundrum.
That's a thing.
Yeah, and then lastly, our podcast, it's Secret Friends Unite podcast. We're on every service you have. Our home is at Podomatic, but have been talking to Dave more, taking the plunge. I am so lazy, though. I'm like, I have to learn something new. I have to do this because our backlog of podcasts is not readily available. So I actually own those locally and upload them. So I may have to have Dave walk me through the process so I can join the DaceSpace family.
Love it. I love it. That is awesome. Well, thank you again. We're going to wrap this up. Thanks, Todd, so much.
Thank you for having me on, Sean. I kind of run out of time listening to every podcast you guys do. And I want to say I appreciate this format because just talking to another person that's different every week, it's fantastic.
Thanks, man.
Really, the last 2 podcasts you've done have been phenomenal. Talking about the mental illness, situation in our country, and you're being very open and honest about it is phenomenal. I hope it helps a lot of people.
Thanks,
I really
man.
do.
I do as well. And we will, just for everybody, just now that it's out there, we will come back to it. It's just, I want to be very mindful of how people came on board with this show. I don't want to abandon that, but I also don't want to abandon this new thing that's kind of opened up a little bit. So we will get back to that, but I want to try and balance a little bit of that. So thank you, man. I appreciate those kind words, and thank you for being with me today.
Excellent. Thank you.
It happened! Todd Oxtra was on the show! I did it! We did it! You did it! You listened, at least. I don't know. Thank you so much. Todd, it was so amazing having you on the show. Remember, everybody, follow him on the Twitter at Toxtra, Toxtra, or more importantly, maybe, facebook.com/group/Secret Friends Unite. Join it, because more than just video games, Todd, this Secret Friends Unite group is like, it's kind of like Fortress of Nerditude. I think those guys need to collaborate, maybe, because the level of geekdom, you have my full respect. The knowledge, the well of knowledge is so amazing. And if you guys are at all nerdy, I think you are. We are nerdy. We are the nerdy. They take it to another level, and I love it. Please join us. I'm on there as well. Join us. Facebook.com/group/Secret Friends Unite. I'm still kind of grooving a little bit. I've just been listening to that Super Mario 2, like as if the band from Saturday Night Live did it. I kind of dig that. Usually go for more of the chiptunes type of stuff. I'm liking that big band jazz kind of stuff. So that was from ocremix.org, just like every week. So thank you to ocremix.org for all of the music. Remember, you guys, subscribe. If you haven't already, subscribe to this show on iTunes, Google Play. It's on youtube.com/WeTheNerdy. That's the best way to watch it. Really, it's the only way to watch it. So therefore, it is the best. Subscribe, leave a comment, all that good stuff. Thank you guys so much. Follow me on Twitter at Sean Capri, Sean like Connery, Capri like the pants. Follow the show at We The GamerCast. The website, We The Nerdy, for not just my stuff. Remember, this is not my website. I'm very happy and fortunate that I get to be part of it. It's not mine. A lot of good stuff that I'm not a part of happening over on WeTheNerdy.com. Remember, I'm on If We Run Nintendo, of course, with Bobby Pauls. That's at youtube.com/NintendoGuru. And one of my favorite things to do, my week lights up every Thursday morning when I get in my car and record the Xbox Drive. Yes, I record a podcast while I drive to work. That means that it should fit in your commute as well. I know you listen to so many different things, so thank you everybody for all the support early on with the Xbox Drive. Let's keep it going. Let's keep the Xbox Drive moving. I think it's going to be a good year for Xbox. What a great time to start an Xbox podcast. So that's on iTunes and Google Play. Find it on DaceSpace. Remember, what else do I tell you to remember? We're going to do recurring guests. Seamus, if you're listening, let's do it. I feel like you should be the first recurring guest. I've had you on once before, but now that we're moving into this new era, let's do it, man. I want to catch up with you. That would be great. I will have my reviews on We The Nerdy for Cuphead and Forza 7. That's happening. Guys, let's wrap this up. Thank you to our artists Gary Gray and Adam Leonhardt, not to brag, our video designer Antonio Guillen from Switch Talk, this podcast, of course, powered by DaceSpace, network of podcasts, indie podcasts, Nintendo Nostalgia's on there, Topic Nintendo, so many others. Otherwise, this is episode 106. It's now in your ears and your eyeballs. Thank you again for listening. I'll be back next week. Hope you're there too. Let's go hang out with some Jason Lacey. Jace plays games. Jace on. Jason. Jason.
Jason! 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 Sean! 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 Sean, where are you? Jason! 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 Sean! 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 Jason! 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 Jason!